What's up everybody? Today I want to show you how to rewrap your car's dashboard trim pieces. Now this is of my Mercedes R170 SLK 200. I've already removed all the center pieces here. You can see it's got this kind of a carbon weave, but it's worn. So I went out and purchased a carbon look self-adhesive wrap. I've got a heat gun here that we'll use for stretching the wrap, perhaps also working on some of the glues that are on here. And once this is done, we'll put that back into the car. I've got some additional videos showing how to remove the radio, how to remove the trim pieces. So if you want to know how to do all that before we get into all this, just check my channel and watch those videos there. Now this carbon weave is self-adhesive. It's got a little drawing surface on the back which has a grid. So once we flatten that out, we can actually start laying our parts out and drawing the pieces that we need, making all the cutouts so we have a nice tight fit. Also, if you notice when you take it out of your car, these lines, they kind of match up. So we want to have one smooth visual as we look across the dashboard. So we'll line these out once we have this carbon flattened on the floor, so we get a nice and equal distribution. If the material remains unruly because it's just out of the cardboard, we've got some clamps over here so we can clamp it down to whatever we need. And then of course the edges, once we've done them, we can use our heat gun and hopefully get them to adhere properly. Now some of my other trim pieces were the ashtray, so I've actually gone and washed it. So it was full of ash and things and was greasy, so you want to of course degrease and clean everything before you start this procedure. Otherwise the new tape will either not adhere properly or will just come off in no time at all. One of the other items you want to do before preparing is removing all these buttons. Now of course once you remove the buttons you can wrap the foil a lot nicer. They have clips here at the back side. They're a bit tricky to undo sometimes. You need to kind of push these in. So in order to do that, I use a little screwdriver here to get more leverage and remove these clips. But do take the effort and remove these buttons. Your finished product will just look a lot better if you do. On some of the trim pieces, the buttons can't just be removed simply. They're actually part of a larger switchboard, which we can just screw out here. So we're going to be doing that in a second. Also, we want to be removing these chromed rings here. They look like they're kind of stuck on with these clips, so we'll try to remove them, and if there's any glue, we have the heat gun to loosen this glue up as well. And then once we've done that, we should be getting ready to start prepping the wrap. So I just unscrewed this, and I actually just realized there was no need to unscrew this because that gives you access to this little switchboard here. There are clips here on the side as well, so actually the entire button assembly will just come out with these clips. So unscrewing this is total overkill. Not needed, so don't do it. And there we go, that looks a lot better with the buttons intact. And there we go, that's the buttons removed. Now onto the chrome rings. So getting these rings out is actually quite tricky. The good news is they're not glued in, they can move, but they are wedged in with these little rings here at the side. Now the trick is, when you turn this around, you can see it docks in here, but you can't really pry this out without damaging these. I almost broke one. So what you need to do actually, you need to take a screwdriver and get that in here, and this piece you can actually pry upwards. So there I have none yet, but here I have, and you can see this comes out, and then you just lift and wedge this and the ring starts turning, and you can kind of wiggle and pop it out. Be careful when you do this, it's easy to break all this. You also don't really want to tear this off because I think it's partially glued in. If you do, you have to re-glue it. You might not glue it on the same location and it just won't fit very well. So take care doing this. Alright, here we go. Those are out. Cool, now that this is done, let's go and make our shapes. Right, so now's the point to decide your layout. As you can see here, I have the stripes running from bottom left to top right, kind of like so, which is the design I kind of want in the car. So the orientation is going to be just like this, top down. And then we want to sort of lay out our parts. So this is my shifter cover there. This goes at the bottom. Then I have, of course, my climate controls, vents and all that goes here at the top. And this part here will go in the middle. There you are. Now, if you want to be frugal, you can of course shift everything a bit to one side so you don't use all of it. So I'm going to do that in a second, and then I will start sketching the outlines so we can cut this. All right, there we go. Now these lines here on the paper become really helpful because we won't even need a ruler to sketch the initial cutting areas. So down here, I am happy to actually go with this, making this line there the edge. So that goes down over here somewhere, there you are. And then we just mark this as we go along. And there you have it. This is our box outline. All right, so when you lay these parts down, you want to leave a little bit of a gap because we'll have to wrap some of the material around the edges. It doesn't have to be a lot of material. This is more than enough, but you will need a little bit to go over the edges. So don't actually draw in super tight edges when you start sketching. Right. So here, I'm doing this with one hand. But as an example, I will take this and just indicate where these holes are. Here I can then puncture it and I'll cut that from the upside. Don't actually cut that now, you'll only make mistakes. It's just an indicator for later. And there we have it. We have the rough blueprints for our initial cuts. Now the first thing I'll do, I'll just cut the big square out, and then we'll organize the materials, cut these rough shapes out just in the 3 trim sizes first, see if they roughly align with our edges and if the outlines still align properly. Then what I'll do once I have them aligned, we'll cut holes in the middles here, and then we can cut from the outside in if you like, just to have them align properly. Or if you want to pre-cut them, just leave some space here in the edges, right? Maybe, what's it, half a centimeter, so you have some room to play with. That gives you a little bit of more freedom to work. Now I've started already cutting the outlines here. You can see I've got my trim pieces ready to go. Now you might wonder, why is it important to have these outlines? Kind of just cut a piece and just glue it on. Well, yes, you can, but remember, these outlines match up the pattern on the stickers exactly, so following these as closely as possible gives you the nicest result at the end. You don't have to if you don't like, or actually if you have something without a pattern, like chrome stickers or anything else, then it doesn't really matter. But in this case, I'm going to now peel off this layer and then stick this up from this side, and then I can start cutting and trimming to make it fit my ashtray and little storage unit here. And there we go, I have the first piece on, followed the outlines and stuck it on. Just try to eliminate any air bubbles. If you do have some, you can take a plastic card or something hard and press them out. If that doesn't work, apply the heat gun a little bit and then do the same thing and press them. Now, we may or may not need the heat gun in the end. What I'll do later, I'll cut a seam here and then cut around there. In this case, that's quite easy, and then we'll have our first piece ready. Now I'll go and use the same method of sticking the stuff on to the other trim pieces. Now this is starting to look pretty good, but I noticed some places that didn't want to stick. So I grabbed my heat gun and then just apply a bit of heat. There you go. And then just, whoops, this has gone away. Then we can just check the edges here that they're sticking nice and well. And that's actually pretty good, I like it. Cool. Next piece. So the first trim piece is actually starting to look pretty good. The heat gun is especially useful for the corners here. If you stretch the material a little bit, then apply heat, it softens up and you can press it in nice and easy. So you get a nice round corner. Be careful not to point the heat gun too long, because I almost melted through the material. It's actually very thin. So just take a bit of care. But this is starting to look really good. Alright, let's do the next piece. So I'll show you what I use as a cutting procedure. I take my drawings here, I put the trim piece back on it, and I align it roughly. There you go. Then I make a tiny incision here, there. And then what I do, I trim the sides in place so I have a rough alignment. You can just do that with a scissor. Here, as you can see, we also have a bit of a lip. So leave a bit more because that will stick quite nicely. So I think that's about that much. And here we go. You can see I've cut that. I've left a bit of space. And when we turn it around, it roughly fits. So what we'll do now, I'll again stick this on. And then here, I'm going to probably use the heat gun a little bit to stretch this and work my way in. So some of these pieces here are sticking well. And you can see that here these holes are not that great yet. So I'm going to work them a little bit with the heat gun. Be careful to get the air out. So also not too long. Briefly let it get hot, not too long. There. And now you can see this has become really, really soft. There. And it just kind of goes here in, around. Fantastic. The excess we can cut off. We don't actually need that much because the buttons will be in here again. But this is looking pretty good. So this is kind of how you want it to go. Around the edge here, it's still setting some air, so I'll warm that up. Again, not too long, just really, really brief, so you can press this into shape. There you go. That is a nice shape. Now, I'll treat this with the heat gun. With the rest, I'll do the other parts. I'm not going to show you how I'm going to mount the rest. Basically, it's all the same procedure everywhere. And then I'll start mounting it back into the car and show you guys the end result. And here we go. I've put everything back in the car and check it out. That looks a lot better than it was before. Now the carbon lookalike wrap that we used is from a store called Action here. It's actually quite cheap. It's about $2.50 for the wrap. It's maybe not the best quality. I also found the adhesive is not that great. So it's probably worthwhile spending a little bit more money on something decent. But, you know, it took me a while, but I'm happy with the result. So it's nighttime, of course. It got late. Because, yeah, this takes a while, but there we go. This is how you wrap your dashboard trim. Now, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the content, leave a comment, and good luck with your own wrap. Thanks.